So Natlan is here, yay. We have some new mechanics to go over, 2 new DPS releases that are really strong, and showcase where it seems Natlan is going in terms of kit design, which counteracts a lot of the older units that we have. Hello there, Flip here, and today we're going to be discussing the new 5-star units that are coming out in 5.0, Kinich, I hope I'm saying that right, and Mualani. Going over their kits, potential team options, as well as some of the issues they may face and how they shake the meta. And if you're interested in getting these characters, well then... Hi! If you'd like to save yourself some cash wishing on the new Natlan characters or current ones, then I'd like to announce the sponsor of today's video, Loot Bar. Loot Bar is a safe service I've been using for a few months now that allows you to buy primary gems at a 20% discount, only needing your UID and region. So if I just do this... And would you look at that, in only 3 minutes I've received my gems. I got the 3,280 gems pack at only £37, saving me £8 from the original price. This site has also been endorsed by other creators like Tavot Times, Dukaja, and now yours truly. Loot Bar essentially acts as a gateway, using a VPN to cut down on the cost of gems by removing certain taxes, whilst going through the official top-up methods for the game, which allows you to enjoy all the same benefits as in-game. So use my link in the description below to get a 5% off new user coupon on your purchase. Thank you Loot Bar for sponsoring the video, now back to it. Before getting into the kits of the new characters, I think I first need to talk about some of the new Natlan combat mechanics, as they'll make the kits make more sense when I bring up what they do. The first combat mechanic that we have is the Night Soul Burst that is basically racism built into a character's kit. So when you have a Natlan character in your team and do elemental damage, you will trigger this Night Soul Burst that will activate some certain passives and abilities. Basically a way to look the older characters out of the new Natlan stuff. The only issue is that none of the Natlan characters currently really synergize well together, so this is more so a future character thing that will get better the more the cast is expanded. The next thing to talk about is the Night Soul Blessing, which is basically just a character stance like Chlorind, Raiden, or Ito. But the reason why this is specified is essentially just so they can make really strong artifact sets and weapons and exclude older characters out of it. So just imagine this as a stance change. And the last relevant thing to the combat is the Night Soul points, which are just a unique stacking mechanic very similar to fanfare points. And again, the reason why it's no longer individual and is now a nationwide mechanic is so Hoyo can push newer characters. But with the explanations done, we can now start yapping about the new characters, and I'm more excited for Mualani, so I'll cover her first. She is a 5-star HP scaling Hydro Catalyst damage dealer, because we just needed another Hydro Catalyst, thank you Hoyo. And her gameplay loop is actually quite similar to someone like Linny, where you unleash very powerful bursts of damage that you do have to somewhat ramp up. Her normal attacks are just normal attacks, nothing really to say there, but with her skill she enters the Night Soul Blessing state and will stand on her poor fucking shark that's to take the weight of this fat ass. In this state, her normal attacks will be converted to a shark bite, and yes, this will do normal attack damage. And when you go past an enemy, you will get a momentum stack. Each momentum stack will increase the scaling of her bite, and when you have 3 momentum stacks and do a normal attack, you do a really strong bite. And of course lose your momentum stacks in the process. This super strong shark bite, by the way, is literally just an AC-130 tactical nuke that you're supposed to build around. Her skill duration is based on her Night Soul points, which starts at 60, and you lose about 10 of these points a second, which makes her skill uptime 6 seconds, and after this you enter a 6-second cooldown. And within her skill duration you can get 2 of these strong bites off. Each strong bite takes about 3 seconds to build up, and this is actually ideal as you have synergy in forward vape teams, which normally Hydra units couldn't run because of how forward reactions work, but I'll explain that in a bit. For now, there is one interaction that is unique to her in AoE that I need to explain so people don't doom post. Basically, she can mark enemies, that is how she builds up momentum stacks. And when you hit one enemy but you have other enemies marked, she will fire missiles to up to 5 enemies, and those missiles will do the same damage as the bite you just did to the primary target. So basically, each enemy marked will be hit with the same instance of damage. Though at the same time, when you do hit multiple enemies, she just does less damage. The talent doesn't say how much it is for one enemy, but it says that it's 24% damage decrease when 3 enemies marked are hit. So using common sense, most likely it's an 8% damage reduction per enemy marked. So does this mean that she's unusable in AoE? No. Ironically enough, she looks like a solid AoE character that just does insane single target nuke damage. From the calcs I did, which I'll put up on screen, even if you reduce this by 24%, you still get 340k in AoE with 1 hit. And in 3 seconds, you can do it again. So I would rather have an interaction like this than a character like Yoimiya who just can't hit multiple targets, or Hutao who has to either run vape plunge teams or try and line up enemies. She can guaranteed nuke up to 5 enemies twice within 6 seconds, which is still insane, so this is less of a restriction than it may read, and would only be a problem if her damage wasn't so astronomically high to begin with. Oh yeah, also her burst is also a nuke. Assuming you vape, it's another free 250k damage that doesn't get reduced in AoE unlike her shark bites. For passive talents, the first one is just a duration increase. You can go ahead and read it if you want, but this is just to ensure that you have enough time to perform 2 strong shark bites. And her second passive is not relevant at all currently, as it's tied to the Night Soul Burst mechanic and no Natlan characters currently synergize with her. But again, if you want to read it, it's up on screen, go ahead. So with this type of kit in mind, which is basically nuking, there is one type of team I'm pretty sure we all have in mind, which is forward vape. Normally the issue with trying to forward vape is that when you apply a Hydro Aura onto a Pyro Aura, it disappears instantly, meaning you have to instantly apply Pyro before your next Hydro application, which we didn't have the means to do so, compared to reverse vape teams where you can vape twice off of one Hydro application, so you can have faster Pyro applicators take advantage of this. Mualani isn't at all going to run into this issue because the buildup of her shark bites you have to wait 3 fucking seconds, so you're good. Jangling is enough for that, and without any additional application, burning is also enough for that, which are the ways we can set up Mualani. But one issue I need to highlight is that Mualani gets 0 interruption resistance while in her skill state. That is a very big problem when her damage window is around 8 seconds. So Zhongli, Hell, ironically enough Dea are going to be very recommended. Toma I'm unsure of because even though she does normal attack damage, that does not mean she'll proc normal attack related abilities, and she also doesn't normal attack often enough anyway for Toma to be an actual good recommendation, unless you try and pre-stack him. Also, there's a character that came out that synergizes greatly with the burning reaction to do an immense amount of damage. So when you combine all of these things together, you get a team like Mualani, Emil, Jangling, and Zhongli. Jangling built with only ER in mind on Fav, Zhongli because he's the best shielder in the game and sheds resistances for Emil and Mualani to do damage. And accounting for the fact that Mualani really wants the shielder, I'm pretty confident in the fact that this will be her best team for a mix of comfort and damage. You can probably sub out Zhongli for other shielders, but ideally ones that don't apply too much of their element so you don't remove the burning. You can also try Toma and pre-stack, but I'm not sure how good it will be. Emil is also replaceable by Nahida in this team, which honestly shouldn't be that big of a deal, even though Nahida's damage is a lot lower than Emil's, because of the fact that Mualani's design is to just one-shot enemies anyways, and Nahida can help with that through her burst. For some other teams that stick with the vape idea, you can try Dea as well, like Mualani, Dea, Emil, or Nahida, and then from there, maybe Furina? We'll have to see how that lines up. I'm honestly not too confident in any Furina team right now, just because if Furina decides to apply Hydra at the wrong time, you'd lose double your damage at base, which I don't really think is worth the trade-off, unless you want to forego vape entirely and run Mono Hydro. Mono Hydro allows you to compensate for the lack of vape by having stronger buffs to set up your one-shots instead of vaping. Sijun is the best healer in this archetype as she buffs Furina's damage as well, which is more than the other healers will do. So yeah, this is the Sijun buff you are getting. The only issue with this team is again, Mualani has no interruption resistance, but if you can work around that, this should be a comfy team. We'll have to see how much of an issue that is in practice. Overall, theoretically at least, Mualani looks kind of insane and leakers were right for once. This is the Hydro damage ceiling, but there are so many ifs and buts when it comes to this. One of which being you need to have the investment to one-shot. If you are not one-shotting enemies, you are cooked because of how many hits she gets. Over her 24-second long rotations, you hit the enemy 5 times, including your burst. This isn't a lot, and every 2 hits of her skill, you have to wait 6 entire seconds before you can start dealing damage again. It is crucial you build her with a ton of crit rate and have solid enough investment on her. Also, she has no interruption resistance, as I've said, so getting hit within her 8-second damage window will most likely cost you a lot of damage. And for bosses where she should theoretically be the best, if you don't do enough damage in her 6-second window, there are other carries that can just do damage during the downtime she has, like Nuvolet, Zhao, Alhaitham, and so on. So even though her numbers theoretically are really high, this may not reflect in-game. She does at least have a 40% crit rate set and a crit rate ascension, so building crit rate on her won't be that hard, but again, this is like the only character in the game I'd recommend getting above 90% crit rate on. Now let's talk about Kinich. This Dendro Twink is an attack scaling Dendro Claymore character who's actually going to be good. He is also single target oriented, but deals more consistent damage than Mualani does. So let's break down his kit. His normal attacks, as always, say it with me, are just normal attacks. But there is an exception, being that while mid-air after using his elemental skill, you get a mid-air swing attack, which is cool. So what does his elemental skill do? Well, since you asked so nicely, I'll tell you. When firing his skill next to an enemy, he will grapple onto them and enter his Night Soul Blessing state and generate 2 Night Soul points every second while in this state. And while you grapple onto this target, you will continuously perform these loop shots that generate 3 points.
And when you build up 20 points, he will fire in 1000 MV cannon, because why not? So basically latch onto your target, move around and grapple shot, and when you build up enough points, which is thankfully visually indicated, you can fire off your cannon for a high amount of damage. I calculated the cannon shot to do 106k, which is actually quite high, though it does seem to be single target locked, which could be its restriction, or at least its AoE isn't very big. From the gameplay shown, it looks like he can get a cannon shot off twice within one E skill, as the cannon takes 2 seconds to charge, and then 2 seconds to fire. But leakers also suck, so this could potentially be 3 in a rotation. Okay, yeah, factoring in his A1, if your opponent is burning, you should be able to get 3 cannon shots off. And the A4 increases the scaling of his cannon, but we can't use it yet because it requires Night Soul bursts, and Kinich doesn't synergize well with the other characters currently. Lastly, his burst will summon a pixelated dragon that will fire off AoE Dendro damage 10 times in 15 seconds. It isn't that much damage, but it is AoE damage, which will be nice seeing as Kinich doesn't really have that much AoE in his kit besides this, from the looks of it. For teams, because you want to use burning to fire his cannon off more frequently, Emil is very good. Kinich, Emil, Bennett jangling with jangling on D-put to boost Emil and Kinich's damage. This is going to be his best team most likely on release, but it does have some issues because Kinich will literally just fly out of Bennett's circle occasionally, which will be a pain in the ass, but as long as you can get him back in there quickly, it shouldn't be horrible. Unlike with Mualani, I don't think you can sub Nahida over Emil here as Kinich doesn't do burning damage, so the EM Nahida gives will be useless. Other than this Emil team, not gonna lie, I don't have that much thoughts. I think there simply isn't a good enough off-field Pyro to support his other potential archetypes, to where this most likely is going to be his best team, until the Pyro Archon comes out. Also, I'm lazy, Kinich is a dude, so I'll think about it later when I have to make a dedicated video about him. Kinich's damage looks very promising, and he seems to be at least damage-wise comparable to Alhaitham. It's just that it sucks that his main source of damage being his cannon looks to be very single target. So currently between the two 5-stars in Natlan, Mualani is looking to be a better pull and damage dealer right now. Kinich is still very good though, just single target oriented, and for initial release, both of these units are some of the biggest power spikes you've seen, especially at the beginning of a region. I didn't even mention the fact that they have artifact sets that essentially give them 20% damage bonus and 40 crit rate for free. So yeah. Another thing is that Natlan characters seem to be very movement based, which ruins their synergy with some of the characters we have. Bennett and Kinich, for example, may be quite awkward just because you are going to be fighting your movement to keep him in Bennett's circle, which I find funny. And this might be the most arbitrary way Hoyo could nerf a character. But enough yapping, that's all I have to say. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you enjoyed the video, make sure to like, subscribe, and comment your thoughts on the new 5.0 characters, as I'd love to hear and I respond to almost every single comment. Thanks again for watching, and I'll see you guys on the flip side. Peace.